everyone. This is Alexis Boss, and this is your favorite Black Lobbyist podcast. So, today I want to talk about gratitude in the grind. It is the Thanksgiving holiday season. So, this is a time to spend with your family, your friends, loved ones, and just really kind of show your appreciation for those in your life, but also take that time to pause and what that pause looks like. And so I'm really excited to kind of get into today's conversation because I think it's going to be really helpful for those, especially to be honest, y'all, the year that we have had. We have had a year politically, culturally, socially. And I think, as we are all on a macro level experiencing all of this at the same time in real time, it's really good to find ways of how to find that time to rest and also figure out what that looks like. But also, too, I want to talk about the conversations we're going to have at that Thanksgiving dinner table because you already know somebody's auntie and uncle or mama or cousin is going to bring up something related to politics, right? So I want to talk about how are we going to be able to engage and have those conversations intellectually without it going into an argument, but also knowing when to engage and to disengage, right? So I really am super excited to get into it. Let's go. So just to be clear, like I said, I think gratitude is glamorized in a lot of ways, and I think we are in this wellness period where a lot of people use these buzzwords like gratitude and rest and therapy and manifestations, all these things, and don't really know how to apply it in real life. I think it sounds good when you say it, but when you actually have to do the thing, it can be a lot more difficult than some may think. And so, what does gratitude look like? What does it mean? And so, sometimes it can cancel out or it can mask as exhaustion or disappointment. And we think that, well, oh, I just need to express gratitude. But how do you express gratitude when you might have had a year where you didn't feel like you accomplished any of your goals, right? You had a year where you feel like nothing was going the way that you had planned or hoped, right? Or you wrote it down in your journal and you manifested, you prayed, you did all the things, and somehow you're still trying to find a way to be thankful, right? It can be difficult. It can be really, really hard. So, I know finding that time to be thankful, finding that time to reflect and to pause, whether it's about your work and career, whether it's about, what's going on in the world, family, friends, your social life, taking that time is going to be so imperative, especially while you have it, right? A lot of people typically, if you work a traditional 9 to 5 job or corporate job, if you're in school, you typically get days off for these holidays if you do celebrate the holiday. And so, and if you don't celebrate the holiday, you still get that time off. So how are we going to use that time that we get off of the hustle and bustle of the grind of the fast-paced work environment, the fast-paced hustle culture? I got to do something. If I'm not doing something, I'm not waking up at 4 in the morning and drinking sparkling water and taking all these vitamins and all these things, I'm not doing nothing. I'm not living my life. I'm wasting away, right? So how do we want to escape that? But how do we also find time when it's actually built in for us culturally and on a society base? How do we make time and space for that when it's already given to us? And what does that look like? Does it mean that we're just sleeping in because we ain't slept, honestly, for 8 hours in 4 months? Does it look like that we are disassociating? So we're just doom scrolling because that's kind of our outlet and that's our only way that we can kind of escape the reality that we don't really want to deal with? Or does it look like you are hanging out, taking time to actually socialize because you never really got a chance to because you struggle with work-life balance, right? Figuring out what does that look like, taking that time for yourself, but also taking time to express and reflect of what did my year look like? What did or I didn't accomplish? I always personally take the time at the end of the year, especially around the times where it's typically around the holiday season, it gets slower. So you really kind of, again, have that built in time to just sit back and just, ponder and sit and think like, okay, dang, what am I doing? What did I do? Was it a good year? Was it a bad year? Was it mixed, right? Because sometimes I think, we look up and it's like, dang, it's November already, I know that happened for me. Like, I'm like, dang, we already at the end of the year. Like, 2025 came and gone, right? And sometimes I look back and I'm like, I swear, anything before May was last year, and I'm still trying to figure out and process August of this year, right? Like, I feel like I'm trapped in like a different month. But I mean, you know, living in America, especially since I traveled to Europe, living in America, it really showed me that there is this like energy of just hustle in the air, whether you want to hustle or not, whether it's something you want to participate or not. It's sometimes it's hard to have a slow morning, right? Like compared to when I was in Europe and waking up at 10 a.m. in the morning was like, you're doing great. That's early, right? Compared to here in America, you wake up at 10 a.m., someone looking at you like, dang, you still sleep? So it's definitely a difference culturally and societally, having to operate in a fast-paced environment, especially if you live in a major city. Typically, the South moves a lot slower than quote unquote the North, but it's still something where it's that hustle kind of energy, and so sometimes it can be exhausting, right? But I always ask myself, and I implore you to ask yourself, how has your year been? Why rest and reflection may feel something that you need to take, because your body, like I said in episode 2, I talked about burnout. If you don't do it, your body's going to do it for you. And so we really have to sit with ourselves and intentionally take that time, especially since it's built in. And I think we can also decenter the holiday, right? Because I know some people have mixed reviews about celebrating Thanksgiving, Christmas, or certain holidays in general. And so not necessarily making it a holiday focus a lot of the time. Sometimes you just focus on the time is built in. I get these days off, right? If I work, and so what does that look like for me? And so really I implore you to take that time, ask those questions, journal, take audio notes, but really sit and reflect on the year that you had, the past 6 months. Sometimes I even do quarterly check-ins with myself as if I'm my own, manager, right? And technically you should look at it yourself, that you're your own manager, you're your own boss. And so I think really taking a seasonal pause and moment is really the best course of action. But sometimes gratitude looks like saying no, right? Sometimes it can look like closing your laptop and letting go of the thought of who you were or who you thought you would be, right? And I think we get so caught up and focused on the vision and the idea because every time, right, it's built into the culture that the new year comes around, we have to set our new year resolutions, our goals, and all those things. And so we typically start to think about it around this time of the year. And we always envision what am I going to be doing? What am I going to look like? I'm going to be working out. I'm going to have this summer body. I'm going to be getting this promotion. I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to put myself more out there, whether it means romantically, whether it means socially with friends, whether it means advocating for myself in the workplace. We set these goals and we have these dreams and ideals how we want to look and show up in the year, and we try to stick to them, right? Of course, life is going to do its thing in life, but what does that look like? And how do you deal with it when you are not abiding, in a sense, by the goals that you set for yourself, or you try to, and then it doesn't go the way you planned it to go? So I think still finding time to express thanks and also learning to forgive. That's not necessarily forgive others, which you should, but forgiving yourself, because I think sometimes we harbor that burden and we carry it where it's like, oh, I wanted to do this. I wanted to accomplish all these things. I wanted to look like this. And we're really hard on ourselves. Like I always say to people, I'm my worst critic. Like you can't tell me anything bad about me because I'm gonna do it myself, right? I'm going to be the person that is gonna say the worst things about me, right? And I'm not saying that's the best thing, and that's not how you should. But typically, as people and as individuals, especially when you're ambitious and determined, and you have dreams and goals, and you want to do things in life, you typically are pretty hard on yourself. I'm a slick overachiever, so it's kind of built in. I'm working on it in therapy, but the point is that what does it look like when we have to learn to forgive ourselves for not being in the person who we thought we were going to be in that year, right? Like, and relinquishing that idea and that control of, I didn't accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. And that's okay. Like, I'm still enough. It's still good. I still accomplished this, that, and the third. Like, think of the things that you have done instead of focusing on what I didn't do or what I didn't get to, and I didn't get to the checklist or I made it to halfway. And it's like, because you got to forgive yourself. And sometimes we don't think of it that way, but it is a form of forgiveness when we beat ourselves up like that. So I implore everyone watching is to, outside of just reflecting and expressing thanks for, the year that you've had. Because first off, let's clap it up. You made it. You made it, and that is a big blessing, especially because I experienced a close loss of mine in 2024, and so I know the holiday season is going to look really, really different for me and my family this year without that person, and I'm pretty sure others are going to experience that as well because I'm not the only one that's experienced, loss and grief and having to navigate holiday season, which is already a difficult time anyway for a lot of people, but learning on an individual side or learning on an individual scale to really take that time for yourself and check in with yourself. And what does that look like? Saying no to maybe you don't need to hang out. Saying no to family, or friends, which can be really, really difficult. But I really implore you to take that time for yourself because no one else is going to check in on you like you're going to check in on you. And sometimes we expect it and look for that and for other people to do that when we sometimes are seeking a cry for help, but it doesn't always come sometimes. And maybe it does, but, I definitely say, letting go and relinquishing the control and the idea of who you thought you were going to be because we all have a plan. But let me tell you, I did not see this in the bingo cards for 2025 for me. So I have to do a lot of reflecting. I have to do a lot of letting go of who I thought I was going to be, how I thought I was going to show up in this space or in that space or in this thing. What I wanted to accomplish, what I wanted to do. And it's okay. Like, I think I still did an amazing job. And honestly, you will be surprised how you view yourself compared to how others view you from their perspective. And from just on a personal scale, like from what I've been receiving so much like love and support and just like praises. And I'm like, dang, like, okay, I really rocking, because I'm thinking it's looking a mess, And so, again, you're always going to be your worst critic, but I think it's really, taking that time for yourself. And so, you know, if you don't listen to nobody else, maybe you won't listen to me, but listen to yourself because you gonna know what's wrong with you. You gonna know. So, um, I really want to get into um, these Thanksgiving conversations. So fun fact. I've always had a thing for politics and policy. So politics and policy related conversations have always been a big part of my family dinners and Thanksgiving dinners. So growing up as a kid, I'm used to it. I'm used to having those thought led conversations, those debates, those heated debates and discussions where people getting some people walking away angry, right? It turns from debate to heated to argument to now y'all beefing, right? So I know this year has been a politically strained year, no matter who you voted for, what political affiliation you're a part of, it's been hard for everyone, right? And we are in a holiday season where we're experiencing, cutoffs, massive layoffs, and we're experiencing cutoffs in government assistance or delays. We're experiencing massive layoffs and a lot of government jobs and contracts. We're experiencing right now a cut with the traffic air control. So a lot of families are going to be impacted of probably not being able to see their families because, we're in a government shutdown currently still. And so that is impacting a lot of people, no matter, your socioeconomic status, no matter your political affiliation. If you live in a different state and you want to see your family for the holidays and you can't because they're not going to have enough planes or staff to make sure you get there or get there safely, it's going to look different for a lot of people this year, and I think that's something we definitely, have to sit with. And this is a time outside of just expressing gratitude. This is a time to also be empathetic again to not only your situation but to others who are also probably in similar situations or different situations. And I think when we're having these conversations, right, when we're blending the, bringing people together for the holidays, and we already got to deal with the shady aunties and uncles, the shady cousins that be like, oh, I thought you would have been married by now, or oh, I thought you was dating so and so, or oh, like you still ain't got no job, I feel like all families, no matter where you come from, we all experience the shadiness of the holiday season from family we ain't seen in like 6 months, and they got the nerve. But I ain't gonna get into it. I'm not gonna get into it. But we all know that shade. So we got to figure out how to be around family that we know we love in this holiday season, but also talking about the different political, social, and generational perspectives, right? This is where we're going to be blending all walks of life, generationally, different social perspectives, and also some mixed political perspectives. Not every family is always on the same page and agrees, right? So how do we have thought-led conversations while still keeping the peace? And that's the goal, right? We don't have to agree. We don't have to always fully understand someone's perspective or point of view. But how do we learn how to have the conversation, respect each other's perspectives while it not turning into a massive blowout, right? And I feel like the current administration, how everything's been going, gives us a lot to talk about. The biggest thing is navigating these discussions with grace. So the difference between listening, educating, and also disengaging. And I know a lot of times people think that they're really good at listening, but they're not. I always talk about the difference between I hear you and I'm listening. Active listening is a lot different than I hear what you're saying, but I'm not comprehending nor am I processing what you're saying. Active listening is you able to process what someone is saying, regurgitate what they can say, but also processing your feelings around it and taking that time to actually form a response. And a lot of times I think we hear each other because, again, I always will say this, politics is always connected to ethos. It's always going to a lot of times be connected to emotions because this impacts real people. This impacts your daily life. So how can I not feel emotional? How can I not feel passionate about something that's impacting me and my family or my community? And so a lot of times we have to build up, and that's what I'm trying to get everybody to learn, is to build up that skill set to have these engaging conversations, to actively listen to a different perspective and a different side. And, in episode 13 with my dear friend Deanna Harris, she's a Republican. We had a thought-led conversation. We don't always agree on everything, and we may not agree on a lot of things. But at the end of the day, we're able to listen to one another, have a thought-led conversation, engage, and find time to be able to hear each other out and go from there and hear a different perspective, right? So that's the first thing I would say is when you're at these Thanksgiving tables, actively listen, not just hear and not listen to respond, listen to understand. I always say that. A lot of people listen to respond, so they're just waiting for you to shut up so they can say what they want to say. And if you want to say something, if you forget, I know sometimes if I don't get it out right then and there, I'll forget. So a big tip of mine is write it down, type it up on your phone. If they say something where you're like, I have a question or I have a response to that, but I don't want to forget it, but I don't want to be rude and interrupt, write it down, jot it down. It's okay. You got a napkin right in front of you for dinner. I know you eating that Thanksgiving turkey. Go ahead and write it down the napkin and then wait for that person to finish, be respectful of one another and then respond. And sometimes too, I will also say, you don't always have to respond to everything. Even when someone asks for a response, if you don't have a response or something that you can give, say, I don't know. Or say, actually, I can get back with you on that. I'm not really sure if I have, an answer to that at the moment. But I'm going to do some research. I'm going to figure it out. But I don't have the answer for you right now. I can't, I'm not a walking encyclopedia or a dictionary, right? I'm not Google. And so some of these things take time and knowledge and wisdom and discernment and research, and that takes time, right? You're not going to always have every response. So that's like definitely tip number one is when you're at these Thanksgiving dinners, when you're at the table with family and they're trying to rage bait you, they're trying to get you, to say a thing or say the not thing, listen with grace, active listen, and listen to understand and not just listen to respond. I'll also say too, educate. So a big part of a lobbyist's job is to educate outside of building relationships, outside of being on the Capitol, connecting with legislators and advocating for change. We are big educators. We educate a lot of times lawmakers and corporate functions, organizations on what is happening, right? What's happening in the political landscape, what is happening legislatively, but also too, keeping people up to date and abreast and researching what's going on so that we can be able to inform and make informed decisions, right? That's the big thing. We're never just out here making uninformed decisions. It may be different perspectives, and we're always maybe seeing it from a different side of the coin, but it's still an informed decision. And so the biggest thing is educating. If you are talking to someone that is not as educated in this space or educated or have the full knowledge of something, right? It could be an array of things. Then that could be a moment to educate somebody on it. Like, hey, actually, instead of like, you're wrong, you're this, you're that, take that time. Again, the first step is grace, right? We gotta always lead with grace, even when the other person is not. And that takes a little more skill set than most people have. But I will say it's a good skill set to bring into the space, especially when we're having politically charged conversations. And especially when we don't see on social media or in the media actual intellectual thought-led conversations. We're seeing a lot of back and forth badgering and right? That's not real life. I hope it's not. It's not my real life. Let me say that. So the biggest part is educating somebody. How can I get someone to understand the facts of something? That's education. The facts, something that you can prove, the evidence, the fact, not just fairy tale dust, not just, this is my opinion, this is my belief, I think, I believe. No, I'm educating you on a certain issue that you are not fully aware of. I typically do it a lot. And I also want to chime in too. I want to talk to my fellow lobbyists and also just people that are educated in not just only a policy space, but in your field. Are you always the go-to person at the table when they're like looking to you and being like, hey, you know about this thing, teach us. And you're like, I'm here to eat my yams and collard greens. I ain't got the mental capacity to sit up here and teach y'all something. So I know for me, especially around this time, especially what's going on, I'm always the go-to, be like, can you explain this for us? Because I don't get it. Can you break down this bill? Can you do this? Can you do that? And you're just like, well, some things are going to take longer than just a 20-minute conversation, right? So a lot of it is education. educate yourself if before you try to educate somebody else. To start there, but I would definitely say doing your research, knowing what you're talking about, knowing your stuff. So because again, if you don't and you're coming to these conversations, it's going to get emotional, it's going to get charged up, and it's going to cause a whole back and forth, which leads into an argument, which leads into more stress that you already walked into the dang function with anyway, right? Um, and I'll also say the last thing is navigating these discussions, and what does it look like to disengage, and how do you disengage properly? So I know a lot of times when people get overwhelmed, when people get frustrated, mad, or there's an emotional buildup, people typically disengage by shutting down, right? They get silent, they get mute, they no longer engage. You can tell from their body language and posture, they are no longer engaged in the conversation. They no longer want to be in the space in the room. They are visibly uncomfortable. That is not the disengagement that I'm referring to, nor do I want you to try to do, because that only puts you in a worse mood, and it shifts the energy of the whole entire point, which is to express gratitude, right? Which is to give thanks, which is to be around family, to love on one another. And that's what we're here for. We can have these solid conversations, but how do we do it while still expressing gratitude? And I know that's harder, it's easier said than done. But disengaging sometimes could look like, and the one I'm referring to is when someone's coming at you, because sometimes people just want to get a reaction out of you, and that's just the reality of it. I'm not going to sit here and say some people are coming with pure intent. Some people thoroughly just want to rage bait. Some people thoroughly just like to shake the table. And a lot of times the best way to shake the table is at the Thanksgiving dinner table or at the Christmas, potluck or whatever. And this also could work. These tips not only for family, but also in the workspace. I don't always recommend bringing politics and stuff in the workspace, but if it gets brought up, these tips can also be transferable in any space that you're in, whether it's work, whether it's with your friend groups, strangers, and or family. But disengaging could look like when someone's trying to rage bait you, or someone's trying to push to get you to get an emotional response out of you. The best way I disengage is setting boundaries. Hey, I really don't like your tone, especially if people's tone is increasing. I really want to have this conversation with you. I really would like to have this conversation with you, but your tone is getting to a point where I don't like it, right? It's getting a little aggressive, or, whatever the case is. Let's take a step back. Let's reset. Let's have this conversation with respect. Let's make sure we respect each other's point of views and perspectives, whether we agree or not, and set that boundary. Let it be known what you will and will not tolerate during a discussion. Keep an even-toned voice and tone. There's no need to get upset or bothered. Just let it be known, hey, I'm not going to argue or raise my voice at you. That's not how I'm going to do things. And if they continue to push and continue to raise voice and pretty much continue to step over your boundaries, or the standard that you set or expectation that you set in the conversation, then that is where you're going to stop and just say, hey, I've already told you before, I would like for you to not yell at me. I would like for you to not curse at me or call me at my name or be disrespectful, and please respect my boundaries or whatever the case is. But since you are no longer doing that, I'm no longer going to be part of this conversation. I will stop talking. I will pick up my plate or wherever I'm at, and I will remove myself. I'm no longer engaged in this conversation because you are no longer respecting me and what I am bringing to the table. And that is how I disengage. That is how I think it is best for someone to disengage, is by setting a boundary, letting it be known what you will and will not tolerate, because sometimes people will try to get you into a argument, and just so they can see you explode, and so y'all can just argue. Some people just like to argue. That's just really what it is. And especially the best way to argue with somebody is to bring up a polarized political statement or thing. And so I know I said a few things. Active listening to understand, educating yourself, doing research on the thing that another person may not be familiar with, but also learning, teaching yourself to educate someone in grace, And lastly, learning how to properly disengage. It can be difficult when you are overwhelmed and you're frustrated and you feel a certain type of way because someone you may feel disrespected, or you may get offended by what someone has said. And it's easy to shut down, physically and emotionally and verbally. But the best way to engage is to start the conversation off, or the debate or the discussion, with some kind of standard of, we will respect each other. You will not interrupt me when I'm speaking. And if it comes to a point where it's continued and it's continued to be disrespected, then that is where you step away from the conversation and communicate that. So those are some helpful tips that I like to do or use when having discussions, when having heated debates, or even conversations that are opposing or polarizing from my personal views, or even the views of the people that I advocate on behalf of. And so again, I'm very, familiar that we are in a polarized time. A lot is going on. We're already in a high emotional state. And so when we are in these spaces, I don't want us to lash out and now everybody fighting at the, the Thanksgiving table. And so these are just some helpful tips of just creating boundaries in a conversation. Redirecting, polarizing comments is helpful. Asking clarifying questions instead of debating. So sometimes, if you are trying to understand something, sometimes people will make blanket statements. Well, what do you mean by that? Can you further clarify your point? Can you tell me a little bit more about what you're trying to say? And sometimes if people can't, and they kind of beat around the bush, and that just lets you know we're not really having a debate, where you're just telling me how you feel. And that's okay. It's just knowing the difference between a debate and an argument. And a lot of people have arguments and not actual debates. To clarify, a debate is a conversation between, or discussion between, two people with two opposing perspectives, but both have facts and evidence backed up behind it. And it's an intellectual conversation. That is a debate. An argument is two people just arguing, fussing, yelling at each other, not really creating the proper space to have the conversation. So I just want to put that in there, the difference between what a debate and an argument is. And I think people misconstrue the two. And I would say lastly, just knowing when to preserve your peace. That's the biggest thing. Not everything, again, renders a response. Not everything needs to be said and debated and discussed and back and forth. Sometimes your piece is a lot more important than proving a point. And I don't know if that stuck with somebody, but I know that stuck with me, because I had to learn. And let me tell you, Alexis in college was real feisty. I don't play now, but Alexis didn't play back then. So I was definitely I was the girl that was quick. I was quick with it. I was real charged up and passionate and all the things. I'm still passionate, and but I had to learn to mature that emotionally. I had to learn how to separate my personal feelings and my feelings professionally, or my feelings in a different space that is a lot of times not even personal, right? We're all living a different life, and some of us are living similar life, right? And so some of us have similar, shared experiences, and some of us have complete opposite shared experiences. So figuring out how to just navigate that in this space, I think. So hopefully those tips will be helpful for you at the Thanksgiving table or in the workspace. I hope not, but or even in social or friend groups. But I know those definitely help me when I'm having conversations, even, as a lobbyist, even in my profession and with the skills that I have, sometimes it still can be difficult. And so remembering to actively listen, remembering to educate yourself, and also remembering to learn how to properly disengage when you feel like this is no longer serving you. And you got to protect your peace, right? And that's just that's the goal. So I really hope those tips were helpful. I will just say gratitude is not complacency. It is definitely fuel for clarity and longevity for the work that needs to get done. And, reflecting is really important. Being still during this time while we have it and it's built in, it's going to be super imperative for you to really just take time for yourself. and to be able to fully kind of sit with the year that we've had, to sit with yourself and did I accomplish what I want to accomplish, and all the things, right? I also say too that gratitude is not a performance, right? It is a perspective, and it is something that if it's done, I don't want to say right, but if it's done and you take the time to do it, you'll really find the true pleasures in life. And I'm speaking from personal experience. When I take time to express gratitude, when I take time to really sit and be and figure out what I'm thankful for and just express things, it really allows me to see like I've accomplished a lot more than I thought I did. And when you shift, and when you start doing that, you shift your mindset and you really start to show up in a space that it's it allows you to be able to allow peace in. It allows you to be able to have conversations, and you're not easily charged up. So it does shift your perspective and shift how you interact with people, and it also shifts how you show up for yourself. And so again, um, you know, it's not, this life is a journey. It's not a race. The the end is going to be the same for all of us. I know that sounds a little morbid, but that's true. And so we have to appreciate and find thanks in the journey. And so when we do that, we are able to experience and live life instead of feel like life is living us. And so I really, really hope that today's discussion was helpful. I really hope that the tips that I was able to provide for how to navigate those, you know, Thanksgiving conversations really helped you. So please like, follow, subscribe, engage. Please tell me how do you express gratitude? How do you give thanks? And what does that look like? Are you taking time for yourself and really taking the time to be still in this season while you have it, especially if you have it off? I know our entrepreneurs out here, we don't get built in days. So also I encourage you, please take time for yourself. If you don't, work a traditional corporate 9 to 5 job, where you get time off, or you're not in school, where you get time off, make the time. You got to unhurry yourself, create that margin where you can just take days and time out of the week to really be still and sit with yourself. I hope that this was helpful. I love you. I am thankful for you, and I'm super excited for this new season that we'll be coming into next year and the great things that's going to come into play. Thank you. Love you. Talk to you soon. Bye.